Chapter 16. The First Arkonauts. I couldn't move. I was too shocked by what I saw. Ivalio was the first to reach Matthew's side, to see what had happened. It was only when Moana brushed past me that I snapped out of my shocked trance. Matthew wasn't moving. There was blood coming from a wound near his temple. The puddle was still small, though, so I figured that he hadn't lost too much blood. Then I realised that we didn't have a doctor on board. I didn't know how we were going to treat him. Maybe one knew first aid? Ivalio knelt next to Matthew and touched the side of his neck. "He's dead," she said. "What?" I asked, hoping I'd misheard. "He's dead," Ivalio repeated, choking on the words. Moana just stared at Matthew's body and bawled. I couldn't believe it, so I reached for Matthew's wrist and felt for a pulse. There was none. I placed my hand over his mouth, but there was no breath. This didn't make sense. "Does anyone know CPR?" I pleaded. "He has been dead for 5 minutes. A voice I had not heard before said. It wasn't an Arkonaut's voice. It was deeper, the voice of an adult. From behind a stack of crates appeared a man. He was 7 feet tall and heavily muscular. His head was shaven, patchy and imprecise, as if done with a butter knife and without a mirror. The man wore tattered workman's overalls, and he stank of body odour, enough that we could smell it strongly from 5 meters away. He held Alba in one massive hand, dangling as a cat might a mouse. In his other hand was a pair of bloody garden shears. 4 other men, shorter than the first, emerged from behind the giant. They wore similar torn workman's overalls. One of them held Saibu in an arm lock. The others held garden tools in their hands like weapons. "More children," one of the other men said. "Grab them," the giant commanded. Moana, Ivalio and I didn't run. We should have, but we were too scared and too shocked at Matthew's death. One of the men grabbed me by the arm and dragged me to my feet. This man, even smellier than the giant, pulled me up to his face, appraising me with beady eyes. "Why are there children on this ship?" he asked his companions. "Why don't we ask them?" the giant said softly. Then he turned to me and asked, "What are you doing here?" "Why didn't you tell us what you're doing here first?" I said. The man holding me shook me like a rag doll. I thought my shoulder might dislocate. "Answer him," he said. "We're Arkonauts," I said, and I immediately regretted sharing our names with them. "Arko what?" the giant asked. "We're the crew of this ship," I said. "We were teleported on board when the Earth was destroyed." I looked at Matthew's body. He was supposed to be a survivor, and now he was dead as everyone we had left behind. "You killed him," I said. The giant nodded. "He caught us scavenging." "He was just a boy," I yelled. "He couldn't have hurt you." The giant didn't respond. "What are you doing here?" I yelled. Again, no response. Instead, the giant asked his own question. "How many of you are there on this ship?" 250, I said. 250 children? The man holding me asked. "We can take 250 children," the man who held Saibu said. "I just hope there are more girls," said the greasy man, holding Moana. He stroked her hair. Moana recoiled in disgust. Her captor eyed her lecherously. "Get used to it, girl," he said. "Take them back to camp. We can interrogate them more there," the giant said. The other men nodded. They dragged us across the cargo bay to another section. All I could do was hope that one of the Arkonauts or one would see us, or find Matthew's body, or the blood, and come to rescue us. I wanted one to appear most of all. He must have heard with his super hearing. The men had made their camp inside a group of crates from which they had fashioned 3 walls. They had used some sort of canvas material, which I assumed would be for shelters when we landed on our new planet, to make beds and smaller rooms. There were packs of food everywhere, some empty, some sealed. There were buckets filled with water, though I didn't know where they could have found it. I thought it was supposed to be rationed. In the centre of the living room, a naked flame danced atop a gas cylinder. It gave off enough heat to survive the cold nights on the Ark. It was clear that these men had been here for a while. Saibu, Ivalio, Alba and I were dropped onto the floor, but the man holding Moana clutched her tighter. The giant took his place on the biggest of the beds. The other men took their own, making a circle around us. The giant set down his garden shears and picked up a shotgun. He cocked the gun, and the crack-crack noise it made drove a chill down my spine. He didn't aim it at us, but we got the message. "Are there any adults on this ship?" the giant asked. I shook my head and tried to look as afraid as possible. He had to know that I was prepared to tell him everything. What they didn't know is that Captain Amos's memories, locked up in my brain, were advising me. "Keep him talking. He will give away information," the soldier said inside my head. "You don't know anything valuable. Stay alive until help arrives. And remember, a shotgun will do a lot of damage up close, but it's useless at long range. When you can run, and use the crates for cover." I kept an eye on the giant, knowing that he was the leader. He wasn't going to talk, though. He proved as much earlier. But my beady-eyed captor seemed to be the chatty type. I turned to him and asked, "How did you get aboard?" Beady Eyes laughed. Get aboard? We've been here since the very beginning, when we started working on this ship, and we never left. So you stowed away? I prodded. We made this ship run again, he snarled. We knew what was going to happen to us if we stayed on Earth. No way were we going to be left to die when we had done all the work. This revelation coaxed words from the giant. We saw these crates being loaded on board. They were making a lifeboat, not a research ship or a weapon to drop onto the destroyer. We deserved to survive, after what we went through to get it ready. Behind me, Moana whimpered. I turned around to see her struggling against the man who held her. Now that this cargo bay is open, we have access to the entire ship, the giant said. Captain Amos's advice rang through my mind. No, you don't, I lied. We were all teleported into the bay, with instructions to check the cargo until the bay door was open from the outside. I hoped my lie would keep our captors in their makeshift base, and maybe one would then find us. The giant raised the shotgun and pressed the barrel against my forehead. I started to shake. I was worried I might pee myself. Keep calm, Captain Amos said at the back of my mind. Why would you be sent into a sealed cargo bay? The giant asked. I'm only 15, I said, shrugging. I don't know what's going on. Just waiting for instructions, right? The giant asked. That's right, I said. The giant reached into a pocket on his overalls and brought out the tablet that Matthew had been holding for us. I think you've already had them, he replied, and I think you came from outside the cargo bay. I can't wait, the greasy-haired man holding Moana said. I'm having some fun now. He dragged Moana away, and she screamed. Avalio reached out for Moana, trying to grab her leg. Another of the men kicked her in the stomach. Avalio winced and doubled over, the breath knocked out of her. She fell to the floor and held her side in pain. I turned to the giant, hoping that there was some moral compass inside him, and that he would stop his fellow stowaway. Moana screamed again. I prayed that someone heard her. The greasy-haired man covered her mouth and dragged her away. When they disappeared behind the wall of crates, the beady-eyed one holding me chuckled. You can't let him, I said. Where are the adults? The giant interrupted. I couldn't speak. Even Captain Amos wasn't getting through to me. I was afraid for Moana, Ivaliu, Saibu and Alba, fearful of what these awful men were going to do to us, and to the others if they found them. Suddenly, there was a loud snap. I could hear Moana scream again. Then there were fast footfalls echoing through the air. Someone was running away. This distracted the other men. Their attention turned away from us, and towards the section of crates where the greasy one had taken Moana. The giant dropped his guard and peered out of the tent too. From around the wall of crates, the greasy one stepped forward in short, clumsy steps. Something was weird. He looked more like a marionette than a person. Then he tumbled forward, collapsing, face first onto the floor. His neck bent at an angle it shouldn't be. That's when I realized what the snap was, and that's when one stepped into view. Thank you for listening to this chapter from Stolen Futures. Please like or comment on this video, and subscribe to The Eighth Plot so you don't miss out on the next installment of this book. Goodbye.